Hi folks, book haul time. We've got some really fabulous books to look through, and there will be a little bit of shelf footage from a trip to my local charity shop, Treasure Trove of Science Fiction, so there'll be a bit of browsing for your viewing pleasure. But let's get on with the haul. Let's start with a new book, Howling Dark by Christopher Rocchio. I read the first one in February and had a ball with it, so I was very keen to get on with the series. There are 5 out now and then another one coming later this year. If the first one's anything to go by, this will be awesome, and allegedly it's actually better than the first one, so we shall see. And then I've got a book which I might have already hauled once before, but it's been lurking around on the top of the shelves where I keep books ready to go, so I'm not sure I've ever included it actually. It's Marion Zimmer Bradley's Darkover Landing, which is the sort of origin story of the Darkover books. So this is the story of the ship crash landing on Darkover and the trials and tribulations of that colony as it tries to establish itself where it wasn't meant to be. It's quite a slender book. Looking forward to it. It's meant to be good. This I ordered online, and there's quite a few online purchases in this, and we'll get to those later. Christopher Priest, Infinite Summer, in the pan lozenge, as you can see. There are another 2 pan lozenges winging their way to me, but they just haven't arrived yet, so those I have to wait for another haul. So this is a collection of short stories, or long short stories, or short novellas. I'm not sure which. There are 5, including An Infinite Summer, which I've actually read. It's in another collection that I've or other anthology that I've read before. So next, there's a few books that I got in just regular Oxfam charity shop near where I work in Richmond. So we've got a Neil Stevenson, typically chunky. It's not a book that I'd heard of actually. It's relatively recent, I think. What's it called? Fall or Dodge in Hell. Fall or Dodge in Hell. So there exists a world where we hold the keys to our own mortality, where the limits of survival no longer exist, and the potential to decide our fates lies in our corruptible hands. Gripping a fantasy science fiction adventure that is closer to reality than you might think. And the strapline is, what if we could live forever? And what if we did? So I imagine that's implications of immortality type thing. And then I got 16 I'm sure I'm utterly mangling the name, Cixin Liu, as like 90% of the Western world would say, I suspect. I'm sure that's not how it's pronounced. The Wandering Earth, which is a collection of his short stories. He is the author of the 3-Body Problem so-called trilogy. The first book is called The 3-Body Problem. So I don't know if they're good or not, but it's the first collection of his short stories, including 5 award-winning stories from China, in that they won an award in China, taking us to the edge of the universe to meet stranger fates than we could ever have imagined. I'll be the judge of that. And then we've got a uncorrected proof, so it's probably full of typos, of Welcome to Forever, and I was attracted mainly by the cover, which I thought was pretty. The protagonist is a memory editor, gifted with the skill to create real life in the digital world. When he wakes up in Fielder Reed's Centre for Memory Construction with no idea how he got there, the therapists tell him that he was a victim of a terrorist bombing by a guy called Khadija Banks, who was the pioneer of memory editing technology turned revolutionary, a bombing which shredded the memory archives of all its victims, including his husband, Gabe. Not sure about that. And then I got this because I've got the book that goes with it, Heavy Time. I got Hellburner. It's this pretty ropey. It's an ex-library copy. It's a little bit battered and aged, but it'll be a good reading copy until I can find a nicer one. I am yet to read any C.J. Cherryh, so that's definitely a job for this year. Right, let me put these down. Right, next we've got some shelf footage, so enjoy, and I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, let us have a look. So that is a British Library collection, Lost Miles, which looks pretty good. That looks like another short story collection or anthology. I've got that in hardback. Don't think I want that. Might have a look at that. Got that. And that. I do not have that. Might be interesting. I've read a couple of one Jack Walker book actually, which was one of the Word of Souls books. So I might have another look at that, see what that's about. And that, I think, is the 3 books of the Tripod series, the TV tie-in from back in the day, in the 1980s. So I'm going to take those. I had those when I was a kid. That's a book club edition, so I'll skip that. And so is that. I've got those in hardback. Now that is a nice set of the Bulgariad, but I'm collecting the earlier edition. These are from the 90s, I think. I'm missing the first two. There's no point in me buying a mismatching set. There's a few Alan Dean Fosters. Never sure about him. I don't know why. No, I think those are... I don't know, is Spellsinger more fantasy than science fiction? There's a wizard, so that's not a good sign. I think it is. If it was the Pip and Flinks ones, I would get them. Neuromancer, I've got a better copy of that. Those fancy. There's a Bill the Galactic Heroes. Might get those. I've got all of those. Although that is a much nicer copy than mine. I think I might get that. Not interested in James Herbert. Not interested in that. All those. That looks like an anthology. Looks like fairly old stories. TV tie-ins. Walking Dead. Ooh. Now I've got... Oh, look at that. Stanislaw Lem. That would be quite good, I think. I might have that. I'll have to check. I've got an omnibus edition of that. And I will have a closer look at that. I might have it, but that's quite a nice edition. I've got the two Dark Tower books. That I shall have a look at. Not interested in the Wheel of Time, but that. Now, I've got quite a few of the Anne McCaffrey books. I don't particularly want to add any more. I've got that, it's very good. Maybe. I have Dream Park and I have this. Don't have that. I'll have a look at the Terry Pratchett's because I do have a bunch of them, not all of them. I've got a couple of copies of that, I think. So we've got a Ray Bradbury, The October Country, which is a collection, I believe, of short stories. Looks like it, yeah. And they are sort of science fiction horror, it seems. Come with the century's greatest fantasy writer to the October country, where it is always turning late in the year. That country where the hills are fog and the rivers are mist, where noons go quickly, dusks and twilights linger and midnights stay. That country composed in the main of cellars, sub-cellars, coal bins, closets, attics and pantries faced away from the sun. That country where people are autumn people, thinking only autumn thoughts, where people passing at night on the empty paths sound like rain. Sounds interesting. And then I was really pleased to find these. I had the first one of these when I was a kid. I've in the tie-in to the TV series from the early 80s, which terrified me when I wasn't that young, to be honest. I must have been 11 or so when it came out. But I found them slightly discombobulating. So I was really happy to get all three. And they're in really nice condition. You know, unbroken spine, no, not faded. So I don't know if you're not familiar with tripods, then it follows. It's a what would now be described, I imagine, as YA or even children's books, but they follow a group of kids as they try to escape the privations of the tripods, kind of War of the Worlds type machines that are subjugating the humans in this world. And then I found there were a few there actually, but there were no better condition than the ones I already have, so I didn't get them. But I did get Dune Messiah, which it's a reprint. I mean, it's a like the 18th impression in this edition, reprinted August 1982, so it's 10 years after it first appeared with the Bruce Pennington covers. But I want it really for the art rather than the age of the book. And barring a couple of dings on the bottom, it's in really nice condition. Much nicer than my old one. You can tell it's a bit bright. This is my old one. You can tell it's a bit brighter. And this one's pretty tatty, so that'll go in my spares pile. I found a Stanislav, I expect, Lem fiasco. There's another author on my list of shame that I'll tackle this year. I've got 2 or 3 of his that I am potential candidates to be read, and I will now add this one to that list. So we shall see. Through superluminal technology, an Earth expedition is mounted to an alien planet, Quinto, which has been sending out radio signals. That old chestnut. Among the ship's crew are a philosopher monk who's also a papal delegate, a mysterious pilot who is amnesiac but enthusiastic to meet the aliens, a state-of-the-art supercomputer, and a Japanese physicist who swaps philosophy with the monk. On arrival, the crew find that the inhabitants resist all attempts at communication and that they are apparently caught up in an ever-escalating techno-war. They attack the humans in various esoteric ways, and a strange battle commences. Once again, Lem has created a rich, totally original novel which will add to his reputation as one of science fiction's most admired writers. So it's kind of like an alien contact space opera. I imagine it contains lessons about the state of humanity and totalitarian regimes, easy for me to say. We'll see. I found a chapter of the Earthsea books that I didn't know existed. I thought it stopped with the 4th or 5th one. So this was published. Yeah, so Tahanu, which I have in hardback, it billed as the last book of Earthsea, but this was published in 2002, first published. This is a reprint, second impression, but it's a very nice condition. It's essentially new. Bit of crunching on the bottom of the DJ at the bottom of the spine there, but otherwise it's in pretty good condition. So I get the impression, although you could arguably say this about the whole of the Earthsea trilogy, that it's aimed at children. Enjoyed a couple of the Earthsea books. I didn't enjoy it all exclusively. And then I found John Kessel, Good News from Outer Space. I'm not an author that I'd heard of, and it's in the Grafton, sort of very 80s, familiar 80s livery Grafton. George Eberhardt is the head of special reports for the Hemisphere Confidential Report, 1998's biggest online news service. The Reverend Jimmy Don Gilray is the founder of the End of Time Institute, 1998's most successful TV ministry. The Reverend believes that on the stroke of midnight, December 31, 1999, God will send his messengers to Earth in a spaceship, and the day of judgment will dawn. George believes that the aliens are already here. George is right. So that was published in, this paperback edition was 1991, so that's a bit later than I thought. So it sounded like he was predicting the internet, amongst other things there. I have Niven Pornell, Oath of Fealty. I quite enjoyed Mote in God's Eye, and I've read a few of their other collaborations like Footfall and Lucifer's Hammer. So I'm keen to read that. It's a popcorn book, I'm sure. In Oath of Fealty, they write with dazzling information of an extraordinary society, self-contained, self-governing community of over 250,000 people that towers above the slums of LA. And it is this modern castle that forms a setting and inspiration for a stirring adventure story of the future. So that's an Unbroken Spine, not faded, happy days, good find. I found a couple of Terry Pratchett's. At first glance, I thought were in really nice condition, but on closer inspection, actually, I would have just left it on the shelf if I'd realised. In fact, I might even take it back. But anyway, it wouldn't be fair to say that I'm collecting the Terry Pratchett books, but I am building a pile of them, so I suppose I am collecting them, but not in a active way like I am with the pan lozenges. If I see them and they're in half good condition, then I'll get them for completeness sake as much as anything else. And I like the cover art on these. So that's Reaper Man, which presumably involves death. It does, but it has a rip on the cover, which is a bit disappointing. So let's do some more shelf footage from the shop itself, and you can see some exciting footage of me browsing for books. Who doesn't want to watch that? Edition of Chucky, and I'm not sure if I've got that edition of the Chrysalid, so I'll have to check my spreadsheet. But I should get them if I don't have it. I've got all those Tad Williams books, don't need those. I have that. Ooh, very nice. 2 Bob Shaw books, I have some of that. And I am missing a couple of the Witcher books, so I will have a closer look at those as well. That is a nice hardback of Necroville, which I shall have, I think. I've got that in hardback. I don't have that. That's one of the laundry files, I think, which I shall get for completeness. Some Star Wars and Star Trek stuff I'm not interested in. I actually came away with 3 Witcher books because on consulting my spreadsheet, it seemed like I was missing them. I had the vague idea that I was surprised to find that I was missing them because I thought I had them. And then when I got home, it turns out I did have them. So I picked up book 1 and book 4, but I already have them. So my magic spreadsheet is a little bit out of date there, it seems. But I did pick up book 5, Lady of the Lake. I haven't read them. I've watched the TV series. I don't think I've seen season 3. I quite enjoyed them. The books are meant to be good. They certainly have their adherents and fans. It is a bit fantasy for me at the moment, but at some point I may want to read them. The other 2 that I got that I already have, I shall just take back. And then I was talking of books that I'm actively collecting. I was very happy to find a really nice condition copy of the Chrysalids in this Peter Lord cover from the late 70s, early 80s. What a picture. As far as I recall, no such creature appears in the book. Nothing like it, even remotely, as far as I can tell, but still, it's a nice picture. So that has a bit of a crease on the spine, not especially noticeable. It's fine. And then I'm less fussed about collecting these, but since it was there, I've got it. I've got a few, but I didn't have Chocky, so I've got that. That is in perfect condition on the spine. It's not faded, not creased. So that's in really nice condition. I found a George Zabruski, the Omega Point, which is in his rather nice New English library books, which have these very nice kind of almost pastel-y illustrations on them. There are a few that I've got by Brian Aldiss that are a similar look and feel. So he's at the opposite end of the alphabet. He seems to be a skeleton, judging solely by the picture. And there were a couple of Bob Shaws there, which I was distracted by the format of the book, which is a little bit kind of childish, I think. I already had one of them, which I think was Who Goes Here, which is one of the Pan Lozenge books, actually, which I have. And this one I don't have. I don't particularly like the format. Victor Gollanc's SF, VGSF cover, and it's rather sort of juvenile in its appearance. And here's the other Terry Pratchett that I got, Weird Sisters, which I apparently don't have. I feel I'm less confident about my spreadsheet tracking now, so I might have to check to see I haven't already got it. Again, love the illustrations. And then I am always happy to find a nice hardback in that second-hand shop. And there was a slightly spine-faded, not too bad, a little bit, spine-faded copy of Ian MacDonald's Necroville, which is one of his earlier books, from 1994. So in this book, it's set in the later 21st century. Nanotech has revolutionized the world. Virus-sized machines that operate at molecular level have transformed every facet of life, from intelligent, self-shifting tectoplastics to orbital mining. But the greatest revolution has been the overturning of the laws of birth, death, and entropy. Now nanotech can resurrect the dead, and by 2063 they account for almost a third of the world's population. They have their own cities, necrovilles, within the cities of the living, and have evolved a separate and alien culture, etc., etc., etc. So that sounds properly weird. And then there was a Charles Stross Laundry Files. I've read a few of these years and years back. I quite like them. They're quite funny, quite weird, and I like the vibe of a struggling bureaucracy trying to deal with budget challenges as well as the supernatural. And so I found 2 or 3 of these in hardback over the last year or so, and I'm gradually adding them to my collection. This is a more recent one, I think. So this was published in, last year, the year before, 2022. It's a brave new Britain under the new management, capital N, capital M. The Prime Minister is an eldritch god of unimaginable power. Crime is plummeting as almost every offence is punishable by death. And everywhere you look, there are people with strange powers, some of which they can control and some not so much. Right, this next lot were all bought online. Some are successes, some are fails. So this one is a really lovely condition paperback. The trouble is that I ordered a hardback, or it was listed as a hardback. So that's a little bit annoying. However, I did complain. They gave me a full refund. I paid about £3.20 for it, but they gave me a full refund, and I've invested an extra 80p for £4.10 or something. What's allegedly a hardback, also in good condition. So we'll see. If it arrives and I'm happy with that, then I will pass it on. And then I got a James Smythe, The Testimony, which sounds a little bit like Childhood's End, the Arthur C. Clarke story where the benevolent aliens arrive. What would you do if the world was brought to a standstill? If you heard deafening static followed by the words, "My children, do not be afraid." Would you declare it an act of terrorism, turn to God, subscribe to conspiracy theories, or put your faith in science and a rational explanation? And so there are 26 people in this book that we follow, believers, skeptics, people that heard the message, people that didn't, and it doesn't seem to have chapters. It just flips from testimony from each of those individuals. I don't know if it's internal, randomly scattered, about what they did and what they felt and so on. Interesting. For me, it doesn't have a high bar to clear to be more interesting than Childhood's End, which I found to be really tedious. So I'm hoping that it's better than that. I bought Bear's Head. I paid a bit more than usual second-hand prices for this because it's relatively recent and it's got the name cachet of Tchaikovsky. So I think I paid about £9-10 for this. I really enjoyed Dogs of War. So this is a sequel of sorts. It follows Honey, who's the very smart bear in the first book. More than that, I don't know, so let's have a look. Welcome to Hell City, Mars. Jimmy Martin has a sore head. He's used to smuggling illegal data in his headspace, but this is the first time it started talking to him. The data claims to be a distinguished academic, author, and civil rights activist. It also claims to be a bear named Honey. Jimmy has nothing against bioforms. He's one himself, albeit one engineered out of human stock, and works with them every day in Hell City, building the future, staking mankind's claim to a new world, Mars. The problem is that humanity isn't the only entity with designs on the red planet. Out in the airless desert, there's another presence, a novel intelligence, elusive, unknowable, and potentially lethal, and Honey is here to make contact with it, whether Jimmy likes it or not. So it sounds like Honey is the star of this book via the good offices of Jimmy. So she's not actually a bear on Mars, she's just a bear intelligence on Mars. And then I have been going on a little bit of an Adam Roberts buying frenzy. I have 5 or 6 of his books, and he's pretty prolific. He churns out sounds pejorative. It sounds like he's just turning the handle. He's an extremely prolific writer, publishing, let's put it that way, about one a year. So this is Bet, as in Bet Noir, I imagine, and they are all different in style, nearly all singleton or standalone books, and the cover art is joyously inconsistent from one to the next, which I quite like. So they stand on their own as individual books. It began when animal rights activists inserted AI chips in the brains of animals. The plan was to give animals speech. After all, if an animal can talk, we're bound to treat them more like us, right? A creature that can argue the case for its own intelligence, its own rights, is a much harder creature to kill, surely. Where does artificial intelligence end and the animal begin? And with speech and self-awareness, did the animals also gain a soul? And would we choose to believe them if they told us they had? At a time when our place in the world is being questioned more and more, and when groups are arguing for animals to have rights equal to humans, as we place more and more pressure on nature, Adam Roberts' fable about a world where animals could talk to us could not be more timely. I've just finished an Adam Roberts book, actually, Stone, which I'm going to be thinking about for days. It was very clever, and so I have big hopes. Continuing the theme, I've got another Adam Roberts, this time called Jack Glass, the story of a murderer. It's got a stained glass rocket. It's always nice. Jack Glass is the murderer. That, at least, is quite transparent. He has sliced a lethal swathe through known space. He is without pity or scruple. He is a killer. Were the authorities ever to discover that it was actually Jack Glass that they had captured and detained on a remote prison asteroid, they would return and kill him immediately. And they will discover it. The murderer will have to escape, and that is, of course, quite impossible. From a tiny asteroid in the far reaches of space to a comfortable country house to a sealed orbital habitat, Adam Roberts takes us on a spellbinding journey through a future that challenges all of our notions of crime, punishment, power, and freedom. We know who done it. Now we must learn how and why. On by, you guessed it, Adam Roberts. I actually already have a copy of this in trade paperback, but when I found I could get the hardback for a few quid, it seemed rude not to, so I will sell the trade on. Very high concept and very vividly executed, it says in the back. So where have we got here? Ty lives on the wall. It towers above his village and falls away below it. It's vast and unforgiving, and it is everything that they know. Life is hard on the wall, little more than clinging on for dear life. So his village sounds like it's like attached to the side of a cliff or something. And then one day, Ty falls off the world and falls and falls and falls and survives. He finds a new part of the wall, a vast expanse of cluttered ledges, packed with more people than he ever imagined existed. And a war fought by the popes and their armies, a war Ty must join, a war that will take him on a journey into the heart of the mystery behind the wall. On is a superbly confident novel of a radically different world. It has echoes of A Canticle for Leibowitz and The Book of the New Sun. It's a remarkable feat of imagination and sustained narrative drive. So I believe this was his second book. Yeah, it is. So this dates back to the early 2000s. Yeah, 2001. Very intriguing. What I found, certainly from the book that I've read of his recently, which was Stone, it contained a lot of very intriguing ideas, a little bit of mindfuckery. So I'll be interested to see what that one's like as well. Next, there are a pair. So these are a sort of matching pair. So having said that they're all standalone books, these actually are set in the same fictional world. And let me see. So they are sort of police procedural type thing. Alma is a private detective in a near-future England, a country desperately trying to tempt people away from the delights of Shine, the immersive successor to the internet. Her partner is ill and has to be treated without fail every 4 hours, a task that only Alma can do. If she misses the 5-minute window, her lover will die. So when Alma is called to a car factory to be shown an impossible death and finds herself caught up in a political coup, she knows that getting in too deep may leave her unable to get home. Alma must dig into the conspiracy, evade arrest, try to work out how a body appeared in a freshly made car in a fully automated factory, and get home. or another death will be on our hands. So that sounds intriguing. And then I believe that this book, By the Pricking of Her Thumb, also involves Alma. Yes, it does. Another impossible murder. One of the world's 4 richest people may be dead, but no one is sure which one. Hard to discover the truth behind the increasingly bizarre behaviour of the ultra-rich. Alma must juggle treating her terminally ill lover, again, with a case which may not have a victim. So these are sort of near-future Black Mirror-style affairs, it seems. Aztec Century is not really science fiction, I don't think, except in that it's an alternative history. By Christopher Evans, who's the author of a book that I read recently, Mortal Remains. This is a nice hardback. It's in good condition. It's not spine faded in the Golanc's. It is a little bit yellowed on the pages, unfortunately. This is one of his relatively early books. It was published in 1993. Involves Aztecs, as the name suggests. Ever since Cortes changed sides back in the 16th century, the Aztec Empire has been spreading inexorably across the globe. Now, in the late 20th century, it is Britain's turn to experience Aztec rule. Princess Catherine, the narrator of Aztec Century, is the eldest daughter of the British king. Betrayed and captured in their Welsh refuge, she and her sister are brought back to London, where an Aztec pyramid already dominates the Thames at Westminster. It's not long before Catherine is involved in clandestine subversion and resistance. As the Aztecs tighten their grip, she is drawn into high politics and intrigue. She witnesses terrorist attacks at home and the horrors of the Russian front, ritual murder and attacks from space. And as her opposition to the Aztecs grows, so does her attraction for the Aztec prince, who is Britain's governor. Set in a brilliantly imagined alternative Britain, Aztec Century is an unputdownable story of war, politics, intrigue and romance. So if you like an alternative history and you like a bit of Aztec business, this might be your thing. I'm very intrigued by that. Then I have The House of Rumour by Jake Arnott, which a certain Steve Andrews, outlaw bookseller, was waxing lyrical about. So in this book, Larry Zagorski spins wild tales of fantasy worlds for pulp magazines, but as the Second World War hangs in a balance, the lines between imagination and reality are starting to blur. In London, spy masters enlist occultists in the war of propaganda. In California, a charismatic rocket scientist summons dark forces and a science fiction writer founds a new religion. That's never happened. In Munich, Nazis consult astrologists as they plot peace with the West and dominion over the East, and a conspiracy is born that will ripple through the decades to come. The truth, it seems, is stranger than anything Larry could invent, but when he looks back on the 20th century, the past is as uncertain as the future. Just where does the truth end and illusion begin? So that sounds like a world of conspiracy and propaganda and not knowing what's true and what's not. That is the end of today's haul. As always, thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye for now.